I debated how much of this session I was going to share, especially with the cat telling me that I would probably receive pushback, and to share at my discretion. So there's two parts to this, okay? Part one. Part two, which is going to come like in this video, is the stuff that got deeper. I wasn't sure if I was going to share and how much I was going to share, but I'm going to share it all. So I did a session for a cat named Miriam, and she was in spirit, and it was a sudden, like, unexpected death. And her mom wanted me to ask, like, what lessons she was here to teach her mom. And so she said, obviously other things, but she said, sometimes the lesson is things not working out how you surely expected them to. Being able to sort of run with the punches, stay on your toes, anticipate a change at any time. You could use for that lesson too. All humanity can. You can get too comfortable. You form plans in your head of how you expect things to go because, of course, how could they go any other way? My mom planned to have me for 15 years. She eased into that, accepted a future not guaranteed, then was hit with a blow she didn't expect because she didn't stay steady on her feet, gloves up, protecting her face. So if you think about a boxer and how they're like on their toes or staying on their toes and they're protecting their face. And I said, but even if she had anticipated anything, this blow would have come even if she was protecting her face. So what good would that have done? She said, the knowing a blow could come is accepting no specific outcome is promised. You're hit, but you're steady on your feet. You recover quicker. I said, but that means we should just go through life expecting the worst. Be prepared and expecting everything to go wrong or bad things to happen. She said, your human brain thinks this way. It is not about your anticipating the worst. It's about not getting comfortable in the future you expect but have not seen. Did you expect yourself to be here now doing this, talking to a cat that has died, so to speak? No, you didn't. It's not about fearing the worst. It's about being prepared for change, good or bad. And I said, this reminds me of, and she cut me off and she's like, yes, I know the book. So referring to the book, Who Moved My Cheese. Now, if you haven't read this book, you should. And I'm not going to give a whole thing about it. It is a one-day read. It was written at a 5th grade reading level, and it's how to sort of prepare and handle and get through change. Read it, okay? But it made me think of this book. And she was like, yeah, I know the book. Things have been written and said to help you, your race, species. But the mind is strong and gets very comfortable. You believed Buddy would only last a few months. It's been 10. You saw your future with him going one way, it went another. Were you prepared to have him this long? Be honest. And I said, I didn't think he'd last this long, but I'm happy he did. She said it wasn't what you expected, though. I think we can move on now to the next question, which is about you. It'll tie back in. So the next question was that her mom wanted me to ask was, what lessons can you teach her, the mom, and me, too, that we haven't already learned? She said, well, anticipate change, which I'm trying to tell you. When you envision a future, anytime you envision a future, you are building a setup to be possibly disappointed or shocked, surprised, hurt, traumatized. It's not always bad things. It can be good too, like winning the lottery, getting a promotion, meeting the right person. There are positive things that can happen too. My point is that you should never get too comfortable. Things zigzag. Sometimes it's not that steady line you think it's going to be. Look at how often the weather people are wrong, and they have science, but even science can't tell you exactly what the weather can do because the weather can change. It is the same with life. I said, I feel like you're saying expect the worst to happen. Just plan for things to turn out wrong, bad, not the way you hoped or wanted. She said things can go better than how you hoped, wanted, expected, or feared. How often have you been so terribly worried about something, so much energy put towards how you will get through this thing that hasn't happened, and when it happens, it goes nothing like how you thought, and you realize all the time you put into assuring yourself it would play out one way and it played out another. I know you are looking at this in a negative light, which is not surprising being that you're a pessimist, but it can go the opposite way too. It just so happens that my mom's experience, the experience she thought she would have, meaning with the cat, turned out worse than how she thought it would be. This example aligns with a negative, and some negatives are actually positives disguised as negatives. That's for another day. Going back to the lesson she is supposed to learn, and you and everyone, is you make up stories in your mind of how the future will unfold when you have truly no idea what will actually happen. And it leads you to be either thrilled or disappointed, depending on what the situation was and how you were looking at it. I know you were thinking, what are you trying to say? Because my mind is going here. Like, I'm thinking a lot of stuff. I said, well, it's hard to not imagine how you think something will go. She said, that's because you are storytellers. You tell yourself stories every day of how your day will go, how everything will go. You are storytellers. You aren't mind readers. You aren't privy to what the future holds. Yes, go on. Next question. So the next question was if she knew it was her time. And so, but it was how does what happened to her tie into Endstage and final chapter in Endstage? And if you haven't seen that video, you can go watch it. And she said that this is a straight to end stage situation, no final chapter, just straight to end stage, like you talked about. Well, like that dog talked to you about. Dogs can never trust them. I said, what does that mean? She said, to spill our secrets are, yes, the cats. Anyway, cat's out of the bag, I guess. And I laughed. Like, animals make jokes. It's weird. So this is, okay, so now we're coming to, wasn't sure how much of this I was going to share. Her mom wanted me to ask her. I said, your mom wants to know what controls the track changes that Bronson the dog was telling me about, how tracks can change and you're going a different way now, or tracks change and the tracks are longer. Now, if you have not seen this video, stop this right now, go watch it, come back. It's about just watch it. I'm like having it show up. Like, just look for that video. I said, okay, so she said, who do you think? What do you actually think? Do you have any thoughts? Meaning who conducts the train? And I was like, I mean, God? And she said, and who is God? Are there many? Is there just one? Is it an old man in the sky? Who is God to you personally? And I said, I don't know, like the main source of everything, like all of this, what we all come from. She said, that makes more sense. Does it? To you, I mean? I'm asking you what you think. I'm curious to know. And I was like, well, I'm like, well, I guess there's a God and he or it controls everything. She said, for what purpose? I said, I don't know. I'm asking you these questions. You're supposed to be the one telling me. She said, we are all God in a sense. We are all controlling our own destiny, singularly and universally as one. In part, you control the tracks, in part, you don't. It is a mix. I know Bronson said you are not the conductor, but in a way we all are. But imagine how many track changes happen if everyone is conducting their own. And if we are all the same train. And I said, how are we all the same train? And she said, one soul, like you've heard. One soul is the same as one train. One train with billions of compartments, trillions, but one train. I said, how can we all be controlling our own tracks, though, if it's one train? Wouldn't it be one set of tracks that the train is on? She said the compartments, the sections, are all on their own journey. Each compartment is able to control itself, but all compartments come together to form the same train. I said, so if we're able to control our own tracks, we aren't aware of it. Like, we aren't aware of it. And she said, yes, you are. Every decision you make can lead to a track change. Yes, like the butterfly effect. And she was like I said, there's writing and imagery depicting what we're talking about. So she's referring to the movie, The Butterfly Effect. And if you haven't seen that, just Google what the butterfly effect is. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. This is going to be long enough. She said, you are aware, but not. You're not fully conscious. You're in a twilight, deluded. Do you want this to be a long conversation? I know my mom has more questions, like what happened to me and that sort of thing. And I said, well, I guess maybe I need more clarity on who the conductor is. She said, which part didn't you understand? I said, well, is it God? And she said, yes. And I said, but you said it was us. And she said, yes. Don't you see? You are God and God is you. You are all a piece. And I said, but isn't there a head conductor, like the main conductor conducting all this, like everything here? She said, the source of all there is, which you and I are from. You are a product of your parents. You are not your parents, but you are of them. Two physical parts of themselves came together to form you, sitting here in the flesh. You are not them, but you are of them, created from them. Don't you see? It is the same with the source, conductor, God, whatever you want to call it. Give it any name, truly. This isn't an argument about religion, nor should it be. Your parents do not control you, your actions, the things you do, the things you say. They created you physically, two physical pieces of them joined to make you, but they do not control you. It is the same way the source does not control its pieces of itself. And I said, but I was told everything has already been written and already happened. She said 1,000 times over. I said, so who writes it? Who wrote it? If it already happened, who wrote it? Who authored it? She said, you. I said, so if I wrote or can write my own life, then why can't I just write myself having $1 million? She said, you don't want $1 million. That's not what you want. You want to be able to do whatever you want, and whatever you want comes in exchange of financial freedom. I said, okay, so why can't I write myself financial freedom? I mean, have you looked around? Like, so many people are living in poverty. Why would they write that for themselves? And why can't they just author themselves out of it? She said, you make it sound like it can happen with a snap of the fingers. The billionaires did not write themselves into billionaires, the same as people did not write themselves into poverty. These are, okay, I will put it to you like this. Now we're going a step deeper here, okay? She said, there is a reality where Jeff Bezos is just a regular guy living paycheck to paycheck. There is a reality where you, Lori, were a billionaire. And I said, well, why can't I be living that reality now? And she said, because you have, and you didn't want to. Those you see in poverty have had lives lived in riches. They just aren't experiencing that in this life now. And I said, but why would people just say, hey, for this next life, I want to live in a cardboard box and be starving on the streets? She said, when you realize this place doesn't matter, you don't mind experiencing all the things, all the ways your life can go. I can guarantee you, if every life you lived, you were a billionaire, you would get very bored, because it's not just about being a billionaire. That comes along with other things. Imagine being famous in every life and never getting to experience being a regular person. You don't want that. None of you do. You cannot grasp the bigger picture outside of life here. And I said, people wouldn't choose horrible things to happen to them. And if I make a video about this, there will be pushback, because people wouldn't just choose to experience painful, traumatic things. She said, people wouldn't. Spirits would. That's why you truly cannot understand when your spirit is living in body. A person would never choose. A spirit would. And you are not connected to your spirit here. You are connected to your body and its creature comforts, its limitations and hardships. That is why truly, truly people will push back if they have experienced truly traumatic things, like losing a loved one tragically. Maybe you shouldn't post about this or go this far. A person would never choose that. A spirit knows that flowers come from ashes. A child who loses their parent young from cancer could grow up to make a medical breakthrough for that specific cancer, which lengthens or even saves others' lives. Had they not lost their parent young to this disease, their life path wouldn't have gone that way. That is beauty from the ashes. It is too hard to think this way in the moment or ever. It is impossible to explain this to people who have been touched by trauma. So let's move on from this. Share at your discretion, but expect pushback on this. It is hard to grapple with. So super, like, just, this was a lot. And obviously I sent it to her mom and like got all of her feedback. She was like, yes, like go ahead and share. And I wasn't sure if I was going to share all of it, because it goes deep. I mean, it goes, I don't, like, these are not like my thoughts. Like, I'm just sharing what the animal is telling me. And this one was tough, because talking about people who have experienced like trauma, like tragic trauma situations, they wouldn't choose that. And so hearing this, I feel like I could definitely get pushback. But like I said, like, this is just what this cat told me. I decided to share all of it, despite, you know, what people think about it. And if you have a million questions, just watch my pinned featured video at the top that says your questions are answered in this video. And with that, I'm going to end this at 14 minutes.